Welcome back to another episode of Mad and Love, the podcast where we dive deep into the complexities of relationships, the path of healing, and the journey to personal growth. I'm your host, Dr. David Hawkins, and today I would like to have a deeper conversation about one of our services at the Marriage Recovery Center. To help facilitate this conversation, I've invited Dr. Hudson. Welcome, Dr. Hudson, and Ernest Hart to the conversation. We get a lot of, Ernest and Dr. Hudson, we get a lot of high conflict couples who are looking for immediate help. I mean, they are desperate. So there's been a lot of interest in our marriage intensive programs, which, by the way, across the country, there's getting more hype about that. People are beginning to see that the 45 to 50-minute counseling session may not be all it's cracked up to be, especially with high conflict couples. Anyway, as you know, when a couple will fly in to work with one of us, which we've done a number of times, 8 hours a day, typically for 3 days, that's a lot of time. But today I want to talk about expectations around these programs. What do we as clinicians look for? What do we need to see in them? Is it a one and done? You know, after they've come for 2 or 3 days, are they kaboom set? How do we help them be ready for the marriage intensive experience? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I'm always looking for what the motivation is, and if the motivation is going to help them to come to the table with some regard, hopefully high regard for one another, but some regard for one another as human beings and not simply as combatants trying to win a case. So if they're postured to say, we want a marriage intensive so you can figure out who the narcissist is or whose fault this is, then that's not the pathway we want to choose. We're not going to play referee. We want to be able to have a clear goal in mind that has motivation from both parties. And so if I'm sensing that that's not the case and they're not ready for the marriage intensive yet, they're actually having to do some other work. And the disclaimer for me is saying, hey, this is going to give a lot more clarity, but it's not going to really fix anything yet. We're looking for clarity. That's the outcome of intensive, is to intensely look at it, try to parse through the confusion and get clarity. And then that's when the work can really start.
I think that's a reasonable expectation. We will help make things clear. I want to follow up on another thing that you've said. Both of you have implied this. Couples do come to us as combatants. They do. They are ready to find fault. They are ready to say, look, no offense, but my partner is the problem here. They are the sole problem, and I really do want you to see that. And so anyway, right? That's how couples come to us. They have been combatants. So I don't know. I'm gonna push back just a tiny bit, Ernest. I don't know if it's reasonable to say to this couple, look, you can't come with those patterns of behavior, because that's how they come to us. That's how all couples come to us. They resist, they push back, they oppose. Tom goes, no. I don't even really think I did that. And Ernest and Dr. Hudson, I think you're being too hard on me. And I don't even know, why didn't you focus on she retreated into silence? Why are we not focusing on
That's
that?
an excellent question. Yeah, Dr. Hawkins, I remember sitting with you once during a marriage intensive, and she had become closed in. She was crying, almost sobbing, and he's continuing to rail over there. And you stop the conversation and you say, "Do you even see what's happening?" And he said, "I don't care. You need to hear me," basically is what he said. And I really appreciated what you did, because you called the time out and you actually took him for a walk, and I stayed there with her. That was a significant moment in that weekend for him because you needed to get his attention. So you physically took him out of the room and had a conversation with him. And I thought that was extremely valuable.
This work, by the way, let's make this clear to everybody. This is hard work.
Mm-hmm.
This is really hard work.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's talk some more about Tom. So the Toms of the world or the Judys of the world, by and large, these behaviors are entrenched. Most couples who come to us have been married for 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years. They've been practicing, I'm going to be a little blunt here, they've been practicing bad behavior for a long, long time. Get a fair number of folks who will do that. Push back, resist, oppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I love the example that Dr. Hudson just gave on like what happens when there is there's something amiss going on with the behavior and the response to emotion. And so I remember in the last marriage intensive I did, I recognized that Tom was saying, I don't see how I am responsible for her pain. And so I had to, once we got to that place of revelation, and if he was going to see it, he was going to own it. He didn't see it, didn't own it. I had to say, okay, next session is me and him. And I had to dig deeper into why there was no emotional response. There's no empathy there. And so there was some man-to-man conversations I could have with him that were really straightforward and challenging. I really pressed, and there's a pressing that happens in marriage intensives where it is needed to split and to have one-on-one sessions with them within the marriage intensive because there's something out of tune with the response. So I said, okay, I have to talk to this person alone.
Think about the term, the marriage intensive, and reminding them that this will be intense. It's unlike traditional or even a type of elongated marriage counseling that we do virtually. I ask them to consider this to be some level of emotional surgery. You're not just coming in for a checkup. There's going to be some wounds that may be opened.
Oh, oh.
Yeah.
Dr. Hudson, I like it, but I'm squirming.
And it'll be tough, and it's intended to be tough. Out of tough work comes great success if you work together. So, I mean, that's a term that I use, and I always ask them up front, what are the things that going in will be potentially your obstacles to connecting while we're together?
I'm going to steal that idea.
Because
Absolutely.
if you don't know, you've got to know what your obstacles are to connecting and working through issues in order to overcome them. You've got to know what they are so you can navigate them and be realistic. When he reacts this way, I close down. When he elevates his mood, I close down, I shut off. And knowing those things going in, you can help them watch for those things, be attuned to one another, and accommodate them appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
Do people typically know that, Dr. Hudson? Do they have
No, not typically.
No,
not the couples that we see. Not always. Now she may be more attuned than he is, or vice versa. But you can use that, right? But when you see that, and you see them attending to one another, even outside of the marriage intensive, before you go to that, and you applaud that, and you say, "See how that worked? See how he saw you, he attuned to you, he attended to what you were feeling." That's what we will capitalize on and to make real growth happen when we're in the intensive.
What are your thoughts, Ernest, about how do we prepare someone for what Dr. Hudson called emotional surgery?
I use the words like meaningful work. Like instead of saying this is going to feel good, which it does because meaningfulness does come afterwards. It feels meaningful. But like
Mm.
meaningful work is hard. It's like breaking and resetting a bone that healed wrongly.
Mm.
Like that, I love
Yeah.
the idea of surgery that Dr. Hudson spoke on. I'm going to use that too, but it's really by analogy. I kind of try to help them come into the understanding of how this is intense, and it's going to have to break some things and reset
Yeah.
some things. And it's meaningful work because when you have something like a bone out of alignment, any pressure you put on it causes a lot of pain. And so in the marriage, we've been set that way to try to be, try to cope with painful moments without actually letting it heal. And then when we come up with
Mm.
this very sensitive areas where you put a little bit of pressure on it, you get this
Mm.
big response, and you're going, "Whoa, what's going on there?" Well, there's something that didn't get set right. We need to figure that out, and then we need to break it and reset it. And that's going to be painful. There's some painful things that are going to happen, and then um, the rest of the therapy is going to be about physical therapy, if you will. Staying with the metaphor, it's going to be about, okay, gaining mobility in that leg that just got
Mm.
reset, allowing for the muscles to work right like they're supposed to. And your conversations, how do you handle concerns in conversations now that we've kind of set that bone right? And that's kind of what I think about is it as preparedness that this is going to be hard. You're going to need some timeouts. You're going to need to go walk around the hotel or do some kind of physical workout to get the energy out. It's really going to be difficult.
You also, Ernest, you are. I have such admiration for your work. Yours too, Dr. Hudson. Ernest, you are an interventionist, and I've heard you talk about if you don't reset the bone. In other words, these marriages have accommodated dysfunction. Can you speak to that? That we're going to look at your marriage right now is misshapen. It's misshapen. You're accommodating dysfunction in some ways that need to be addressed, and it'll be change will be hard, but you're gonna acquire new skills, and it's gonna be you're going to get back to being in the shape you need to be in. By the time they come to us, they've accommodated
Mm.
Yeah.
dysfunction. They have tolerated
Mhm.
misbehavior. They have normalized really bad stuff. And we're going to unnormalize it. I don't think that's how a word, but it should
It
be.
should be. Yeah.
So,
Sometimes the emergent coping mechanism came out in childhood. A lot of times we
mm,
may have to go down to that level of like what happened when you were a child. How did your mom treat you? How did your dad treat you? How did you grow up emotionally? Was it, I had a couple where the
mm,
guy he had, his mother was a lecturer. She would make him look at her for an extended period of time and lecture him on all the things he's doing wrong. And so he
mm-hmm.
developed a dissociation just to like boop, check out because he couldn't do it otherwise. And so he does that when his wife brought concerns to him. And so we had to draw that connection to say that coping mechanism and that emergent time is actually doing a detriment to your marriage now. Just connecting those two things can give some
Yeah.
insight, and go, oh, that's not going to be useful for me now. I got to change.
Mm.
That's not going to be useful to me now. It
Yeah.
helped then.
Okay.
That a lot of dysfunctional behavior, anybody watching this podcast, a lot of dysfunctional behavior was functional in
Mhm.
a certain day and time, in a certain way. And it's just been outgrown. It's not useful anymore. It really isn't. All right. You can hear the wealth of experience that Ernest and Dr. Hudson bring to this, as well as myself. And if any of what we've talked about resonates with you, you can start by visiting our website, www.marriagerecoverycenter.com, to book a free 20-minute phone consultation with one of our very well trained and caring client care specialists to learn how to get started on getting help. If you have enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star review and subscribe to our channel to be notified of upcoming episodes. So until next time, This is Dr. David Hawkins signing off for Mad in Love. Take care. God bless.